This is The Dig on the Huskers Radio Network podcast. Powered by Emeritus. Featuring Nebraska volleyball assistant coach Kelly Hunter. Here's your host, Jessica Coody.
Welcome back into another episode of The Dig. I'm Jessica Coody, and this should be a fun one today as we got a couple of big wins to talk about, including the first win in Madison since 2013. And joining me to talk about all of it is Kelly Hunter. Thanks for being here.
You bet. It's always fun.
Well, let's start on Friday. Wow, what a performance from the Huskers. How big was that one? How good did that one feel? I mean, you've been around, been a part of this staff first time since 2013. Why was this team able to get it done?
Going into the field house, it's one of probably the toughest environments to play in. I would say them and Penn State, it's really, really hard to play there. You can't hear anything. You can't hear your coaches. It's so loud. And one thing I remember from their atmosphere is anytime they dug the ball, whether it was good or someone had to chase it down, the whole place just erupted. But knowing that it's a tough place to play and a tough team to play, and like you said, a team we haven't beaten there in over a decade, there's obviously a lot of pressure. And I think our team and our players, they went in really, really prepared, and they were excited for that pressure. They weren't nervous. They weren't going to shy away from a big block or anything like that. I think they walked in there and they knew it was going to be tough, and they had the right mindset going into it. So I would say just more of a mental kind of win, I would say, than a physical one at that point.
So how did they react? How did you guys react just as a program after that one? Because I know it's a big win, but yet it's not, the whole season doesn't ride on that one win. So, but how, I guess, was it to celebrate that one in the locker room?
It was great. Everyone was asking, what did Coach say after the game? What was that like? And he just kind of rattled off a couple different statistics. And obviously the first time we'd beaten them there in over a decade, and first time I think they got swept there in 8 years, and lowest hitting percentage they've hit there in 8 years. So he kind of just, like we talked about last time, he's a stats guy, and kind of rattled off those stats and just said how proud he was of the team and just the way they pushed us, and they would go on 5 or 6 point runs, and in some of our previous matches we would give up those runs and give up a set. But to see the way they were challenged, our team was, and the way they responded, and they didn't let anything faze them, was really, really cool. And so we brought that up as well after the match. But obviously it's one match is one match, and you're on to the next one.
He said before he showed a movie clip or something. Was it Gladiator?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember what it was. It was super short. It was like 15 seconds. It was something like that, yeah.
Just, hey, it's us together, and we've it's going to take all of us to get this done. I'm sure something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different movie references, and it kind of goes from like the teamwork stuff or just it's going to be a battle. So a lot of that Gladiator stuff really makes its appearance with the battling stuff.
So, you talked about just the runs, and that was one thing that Meritt said in her post game, but that, hey, we knew they were going to go on some runs. They're just too good offensively to not. But there have been some times this season where the Huskers did not handle runs as well. So how good was that to see the Nebraska respond and not, to be able to stop the runs? What are we going to do to stop it? They were able to find ways to stop those runs.
That would be the biggest part of the match for me. Like I said, we've had other sets or other matches where we kind of start to go down and don't pull ourselves out of it. I think their mindset going into the match was, obviously they're a really big physical team. Like Meritt said, their offense is really good. So there was almost an understanding of, okay, they're going to get some points, and that's okay because we are too. And I think sometimes when you go into someone else's gym and they get 1 point, and maybe it's a great play, but they get 1 point, the crowd erupts. It feels so much heavier than 1 point. But I think they did a really, really good job of, if someone got a kill that was over our block and our defenders couldn't even touch it, it was just, hey, we're going on to the next point. And it wasn't like, okay, we're giving up, but it was like, hey, that's a great play by them. All right, let's go make a great play on our side. And so I think that was kind of the mentality going into it, of just understanding they're going to get some really great plays, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to feel bigger than 1 point, but it's just one. So let's move on to the next one. And that would be the area I'm for sure most proud of them in.
Lindsay told us last week the block was going to be a key. How good was the Huskers block? And it seemed like everybody was involved and really understood the game plan.
I think Jalen and our guys kind of did a really good job scouting and just kind of seeing what some tendencies are. And like, to my point about, hey, they're going to get some kills, it's our job is to figure out where they're going to get most of them and try and put our hands where that's going to be. And so I think our players really understood the game plan. They understood if they get a kill outside of what I'm trying to take away, that's okay. But I think they also adjusted in the moment also and were able to see what was happening in front of them. And so maybe we did get some touches on some balls that weren't to their true tendency, but we were able to just get a lot of touches, get a lot of digs, and kind of slow them down. And as an attacker, if you're getting touched or dug over and over and over, you try and do more and more and more. So I think it's almost that kind of frustrating or suffocating type feeling, but we definitely had our hands where they needed to be a lot of the time. And I just think we were super focused and really seeing what was happening in front of us.
Olivia Mauch, how good was the freshman? Just, back there on the back row, but also serving. I mean, she was dialed in.
Yeah. She obviously has been a great passer for us, and I think her game outside of just passing has really started to evolve. So we saw defense. She was where she needed to be, flying around the court, and there's times where I'm like, they're hitting it so hard, and we're in the right spots, but even if that ball's coming at you so fast, it's hard to dig. Like, you either shank it or it hits you or whatever, but she just made everything look so easy. Like, she knew exactly where it was going. She was ready at all times, but I think her serving, too, is just a real example of her confidence, and that's where you can kind of see players if they're confident or if they're not. And she had a bunch of aces, went on a bunch of runs. She's been our best server in the last 2 weeks, in the last 4 matches. So to me, that just shows that she's confident and she's feeling like I belong out there. I can make a difference, even though I'm just a back row player, and it definitely showed this weekend.
So, and you guys started with her. She was the first server, I think, both games, right? So what is it that you've seen that you've trusted her, and how does that set up the rotation that you want to start in, I guess, over the weekend, too, that you could rely on her in that role? Yeah,
there's a lot that goes into what rotation you want to start in. First and foremost, it's like who on our team is blocking their attackers and vice versa. So it can be a block matchup, it can be a serve, a person we want serving, like Olivia, for example, has gone on a lot of runs. It can be also to save a sub, because usually Taylor starts in rotation 1, and then right as soon as we side out, Olivia has to sub in. So in some of those long matches, you want to have subs towards the end of the game rather than in the beginning. But I think it was just, she's been serving so well, and we've been playing really well in rotation too. So we're like, let's just start there and highlight our strengths. And she went on a couple really big runs, like I said, in the last 2 weeks. And I think there's just a lot of trust there.
You know, Emily Eamon on the broadcast is talking about, they had a graphic of the 3 with Lexi and Olivia and Lainey Choboy. And I think she said it's my favorite trio or back row trio, something like that. But what are the 3 of them like? I mean, because again, all 3 of them, we know what Lexi is, but both Lainey and Olivia could be starting anywhere in the country probably for their being the starting libero, but how the 3 of them, how do they work together? What's their relationship like?
They're the littles, that's what they call themselves. And I think before every game, they all take a photo together. And there was one time, I think the setters kind of mocked their pose that they do for their photo. And they're like, no, that's the littles thing. So they're super close. And I think with that, they can kind of see what's happening and let each other know and give each other feedback in the moment. And I think they all have different strengths too. Like Lexi is just really consistent every single day. She provides a really good, stable energy. Lainey is obviously super fiery. She will run through a brick wall to get a ball up, and that's a different type of energy that our team also needs. And then Olivia is she's kind of like the silent assassin. Like she doesn't speak much, and when she does, the volume's usually pretty low. But if she does speak up, or if she does see something and has something to say, people really listen, and that's really cool, that spot to be in as a freshman. But I think they're all so different, and they all know their individual strengths and what it brings to our team.
Okay, how good was Bergen on Friday night? It just seemed like she had a lot of confidence and was really set a good match.
I think she understood the game plan that we had going into the game, but then also what are the adjustments that I need to make in the middle of the game, because obviously sometimes things open up, sometimes they're focused on a certain player that we didn't think they would be focused on and putting their block there. So I think she did a really good job of seeing what they were doing defensively and what that opened up on our side. And For example, they were kind of following Rebecca Alec on the middle a little bit, so that really opened up Meritt Bergen, and Meritt had a really good game and hit a really big number. So I think we always have our kind of core values and what we want to accomplish, but that's a really unique quality for a setter to have, is just that ability to feel the game and feel what's open, or feel who's playing really, really well right now, even if there are forehands in her face. And so I think that's kind of one of her superpowers, is just her feeling for the match and how it's going and just what's the right choice at this time. And she always seems to make the right ones.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, are there certain matchups, certain games, certain times where you just feel hot? I mean, because so much of it relies on what your hitters do with the ball. But are there times where you're like, okay, I'm feeling it today? Mm-hmm. Like, are there different, I guess, days like that where you're just on a whole nother level?
Yeah. Obviously, setting, you have to have your brain on all the time. Just your decisions, all the stuff we just talked about. Who's hot? What's the block look like? What am I comfortable with doing? So usually your brain is just kind of firing. And as a setter, if you're kind of staying in that space and like thinking too much, usually your body kind of doesn't really follow. And so you can kind of tell when setters are in their head, if they maybe kind of have that look in their eye, or if they're not moving as smoothly to the ball, just because they're thinking too much and your brain or your body kind of just shuts off. So I think that was the biggest thing, was that you could tell she was thinking about what she was trying to do, but not overanalyzing or trying to make the perfect decision. But it was more so just trusting herself. And we started off not passing great, and I think she did a really good job just getting her feet to the ball and bettering the ball and just making a better situation for her attackers as well.
So then you turn around, and that's a tough turnaround, and Coach even talked about that, how much different of a matchup it was from Wisconsin to Northwestern. How did you guys feel like the team handled that, and having to go to Chicago, and you had the late night on Friday night, but then just the completely different matchup, which you had to completely, I guess, change the strategy probably a little bit too. How did they handle all of that, and what did you guys think about Sunday?
One of the things we're talking about with them is just competitive maturity, and for us that means acknowledging the situation in front of us, whether it's a tough practice or a shorter practice or a top 10 opponent or an unranked opponent, just kind of approaching those games, not the exact same, because that's just not realistic to have the exact same hype level for every single game in practice and day, but to understand the situation in front of you. So we talked a lot about, hey, we got this big win, and here's the strengths and here's the good things that we kind of learned from this match, and here's what we need to work on. So we're always working on striving to be better. And I think even in our practice Saturday when we got there, we were talking about a couple things that we needed to be better at. But we talked a lot about, too, the 12 o'clock start was early, way earlier than the night before, and just being ready to go for especially that time. And everyone's excited to get back home and all of that. So we just really talked about being focused from the start, being disciplined, working on those things that we found out that we needed to work on from Wisconsin.
How many Husker fans were there? Because they had a sellout. They had a big crowd. Was there a lot of Nebraska fans there?
Yeah. I would say it was 90% of the fans.
Really?
Yeah, we're all Husker fans. But
wow.
we also talked about that, too. We were a part of history for Northwestern, and for their gym, they built this beautiful new gym, and to have the first sellout and for us to be a part of it, we really also wanted to celebrate that and celebrate for them, because it's just awesome for their school and our sport and for women's sports. So,
we were talking about this before, but I had to bring it up because just before this, the women's basketball team had their season opener, and they had a pep rally game, a sportsmanship pep rally game, where different student athletes came and talked to the group, and it was Bergen and Meritt Bergen that gave the presentation, and they were so great and just had such a great presentation. I'm sure that does not surprise you at all. And I mean, they do such a good job of interacting and giving back, but you could tell Bergen had prepared for her part of it.
Yeah, I think sometimes public speaking for these guys, they get so nervous, and I remember I was even that way as a player. It's funny, you can go out and play in front of 9,000 people, but talking to 1,000 elementary school kids is really nerve-wracking. But it's really cool to see them get out in the community, especially at a basketball game and a pep rally and stuff like that, because, people look up to them, and just for them to get out there and give them one little message, it could change someone's life or make someone's day. So it's really cool. But no, I am not shocked that they crushed it. Those two are great.
So again, there's just so many things that go into balancing being a student athlete, the community service, the academics. And we talked last week a lot with Lindsay just about this time of the year, how it can get a little challenging. So this week, what is the focus for this week? What's some of the things that the Nebraska needs to get better at to improve before you guys go on a long road trip this weekend?
First and foremost, we talked to them about getting ahead on their schoolwork because we're going to be gone Wednesday through Sunday. So that's a lot of class to miss. But like you guys talked about with Lindsay too, it's hard to balance, especially as we're getting closer to our championship season. And so we're encouraging them to stay on top of that, stay on top of nutrition, hydration, all of those types of things. But I think for us, it's just kind of fine-tuning some stuff at this point, and we don't want to make any radical changes right now. It's November already, which is crazy, but just kind of fine-tuning some stuff. So whether that's our setups on our block or what we're doing in certain rotations, usually every Sunday I go through kind of offensive stuff and Jalen reviews defense and Jordan kind of does a little bit of everything. But we look at packets with tons and tons of numbers, and then you see all those numbers and you have to go look back at the video. So there's just a couple rotational things. How can we get 1% better here and there? But I think the biggest thing we're always trying to work on is just upgrading offense. And we've been #1 defensive team for a number of years. So now it's, okay, hopefully we can do that again, but if we can upgrade our offense a little bit. So I think it's just fine tuning, like I said.
How close is this team to playing their best? When is the ideal time to start peaking?
That's a great question. I would say Friday night was a pretty good showing for our team. And like we talked about, just even the mental aspects, that's a huge part of it. And obviously that can make or break a game. So I think just the lesson that they learned on how to bounce back on Friday was huge, way more than anything physical or any technical thing we could ever tell them. So I would say that was a really good showing, but we haven't seen that yet. So I wouldn't say it's like peaking right now. I think it just all the pieces kind of came together, and it's sports. So it's going to ebb and flow, and it's not like we're going to play like that every single game for the rest of the season. But I just think around this time and heading into the tournament, if you're feeling good about a lot of stuff and not having big question marks on your team or with a technique or a system you want to run, if you have all that pretty dialed in, then usually that's pretty good. And I would say that's where we're at right now.
Well, if you guys follow Coach Cook on TikTok, you guys they roped you in to participating, you and Jalen. One of the trends that's going along where you guess the voices. But I just thought that was like just a cool, it looked like y'all were in a meeting room.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it like when you guys are traveling like that? You got the back-to-back. How much fun is this group just to be around? Because I got to imagine there's some pressure that comes along with it, but you guys seem to have a lot of fun too.
There's plenty of times on the bus where they're just really rowdy, who knows what they're talking about, and they're like, you guys can hear us? We're like, yeah, we're on a small bus, we can hear what you guys are talking about and all that stuff. But it's a great time for bonding. We had an hour-long bus ride to and from the airport in Chicago, and so just hearing, like, they're talking about the TikTok trends and coaches back there making a TikTok, and then I sent them the one about the voices, and then we walk into the meeting room and they're just about to do it with Coach. I was like, hold up, aren't me and Jalen in on this? Like, I want to be in the TikTok a little bit too. But no, they keep it so fun, and it's nice because it's not always all business for them. They can joke around and have fun, and they have such great relationships with each other and with the staff and with everyone on the staff. And they even kind of heckle the officer that we have that travels with us. They kind of heckle him every now and then too. And we made sure to tell him, we said, hey, if you're traveling with us, you're part of the family now. Like, we can't, it's all up for fair game now. So just seeing the way when we travel and when we're all together, when we spend so much time together, obviously you're kind of like, maybe you want to be alone for a little bit, but there's so many fun memories that come from it.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, at Oregon, at Washington, and late game times. 9 o'clock on Thursday, 9:30 on Saturday. First time you guys are going out to the West Coast in this fashion. So what's the game plan? How do you guys approach this double or this matchup here with Oregon and Washington?
Yeah, we know they're both great teams. I know we've been watching them all season long. Obviously, they just got to the Big Ten. We don't know as much about them. So just scouting and preparing, all that kind of starts today and tomorrow, and just kind of getting ready for the volleyball piece of it. But I think last week's trip was a good kind of warm up for this trip, just knowing we have a day off between the games. We have to travel. It might not be ideal timing. I think last week we kind of got used to that, and now this week we know kind of what we need to do. You need to stay active on your off day, stuff like that, and just making sure we're really recovering because they're going to be hard matches and traveling. And so I would say this last week we got a little taste of it. Next week's going to be a little bit more magnified, especially with the time change coming back home. But we're working on the scout and getting ready to go.
Is it exciting, though, to be able to go and play at new places and face new teams like this?
I would say so. I know the girls are excited. We were even talking about on the bus, like if I ever played at Washington or Oregon, and I never played at Oregon. We played a regional final at Washington. But other than that, a lot of our staff and these players obviously have never been there. So I think you get excited for your normal matchups in the Big Ten, but now to travel to a new place and just to see a new gym and see a new crowd and have a new experience is always really fun.
You think there would be some Husker fans that far away?
Of course. They're everywhere. They come out of the cracks. They're everywhere.
Oh, that's so true. So true. Well, best of luck. Thanks again. And congratulations on the 2 wins over the weekend. And best of luck this weekend.
Thank you.
And that is Kelly Hunter joining us on this week's episode of The Dig, powered by Emeritus. Emeritus is proud to power this podcast and all of Husker women's sports. Thanks for listening and watching. And as always, make sure you subscribe and like wherever you listen to never miss an episode right here on the Huskers Radio Network podcast.